Hello! So today you find me on the South Wales coast at Swansea Airport with the Piper Tomahawk from JustFlight on the ground, and we're going to take it for a fly to do some basic airmanship practice, really. So taking a very basic aeroplane with no fancy technical add-ons for a fly to remind ourselves both how to fly an aeroplane and to see how we get on with doing some basic exercises like turns and climbing and descending and stalling and slow flight and so on and so forth. So we'll see how we get on. Should be good fun. I've chosen this aeroplane specifically because it's quite good for kind of edge of the flight envelope simulation. So let's go and jump inside the aeroplane. And also, this aeroplane has very clear instruments. Unfortunately, the Cessna 152 that comes with Flight Simulator, it looks kind of photorealistic, but it's very difficult to read the instruments. So this is very easy. Okay, so let's go and pop the yoke off and have a quick look and familiarize ourselves with what we have around the cockpit. So we have a clock, we have an airspeed indicator, an attitude indicator, a suction gauge, we have an altimeter, and a nav instrument for nav 1. We have a turn coordinator and a directional gyro. We should therefore have a magnetic compass is up here. So this may well drift. We'll have a look at that when we get it going. We've got a vertical speed indicator. We don't have a nav 2, which is interesting to me. We have RPM. Then in terms of switches, we've got the main power switch, the battery switch. Then we've got an alternator switch. We've got the start or magnetos control. And then we've got the fuel pump, obviously, anti-collision lights, pitot heat, landing lights. We've got the fuel shut-off valves, mixture and throttle, and pretty much the same, and some breakers on the co-pilot side or passenger side. Over here we've got the comm radios. We've also got, these are kind of some fancy radios, aren't they? They can do all sorts of things, comm and nav and OBS, so it's kind of a combined instrument. I think we can choose to swap them out and have a better radio if we so wish. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. So in terms of the exterior, you saw from outside we had chocks and tie downs. So we'll go and remove those, and we'll remove the pitot covers as well. So let's see what we can have. Yeah, we can have a GNS 530. That would be really useful for us. So we've got a basic GPS system on the aeroplane while we are throwing it around. And that leaves us with a transponder below it. So we just changed the fit out of the aeroplane basically. Then to make this go away, I think it's covered by this switch here. Yeah. So we need to figure out if we've got some fuel in the aeroplane. So let's go to fuel and check. Yeah, we've got full tanks. So plenty of fuel to go messing around for an hour in the sky with. We'll go and get rid of that out of the way. And let's see about starting the aeroplane up then, shall we? So we need the fuel either to the left or the right tanks. Okay, so we'll leave it on the left tank to begin with. We're going to change the mixture. So just checking my controls work. So we want a rich mixture. Crank the throttle open. We'll go and put the battery on. Now, we only have an anti-collision light. We don't have a beacon light, so we'll go and put anti-collision on just to warn anybody nearby. We're about to try and start the engine. And maybe we'll give it a bit more throttle than that. And make sure the parking brake is on. And it is. And we'll turn the engine over. So we rotate the key to start. And the engine comes to life. And you can see the suction has jumped up and the instruments have come to life. The reason for that is because many of the instruments on these basic old aircraft have an impeller behind them. Basically, the suction from the engine pulls a turbine, if you will, behind the instrument, which provides it like a gyro, essentially. So there we go, and that's that one, and that one. So we've got a 430 and a 530. My word, we are being fancy. So let's put this on standby for the moment. And then we don't need pitot heat until we're on the runway. Notice we were able to start without fuel pump, so it's not that important. Or it's not simulated that accurately, I should say. It'd be interesting to see how well the turn coordinator works, if it will rotate past left or right, which will help us enormously in playing around with some of this. So you can see there's a light has come on for the alternator. So let's go turn the alternator on. Now we're generating electricity and not just draining the batteries. So the engine is generating for us. So we're just waiting for the GPSs to pick up the satellites and have our current location. Before we get going, we'll also go and tune in that Brecon VOR 11745. So there we go, GPSs are up and running. So 11745. So when we do that, you'll see this come to life, hopefully. We may need some altitude, yeah. Oh no, we got the wrong frequency, didn't we? Let's change that back. 45. Is it going to wake up this time? It will when we're in the air. So again, radios and line of sight, there's lots of hills and trees and buildings around, and it's quite a way away to the Brecon VOR, so we'll see when it picks it up. It'll be interesting. Oh, of course it won't. There we go. The GPS was set to GPS mode. So there we go, schoolboy error number 1, leaving this. So if we switch the guidance to VLOC, then the nav will be looking at the radio beacon instead of any programmed track that we have programmed in. There we go. So, and we can also see from Swansea, if we go and draw on our map with a measure distance over towards the Brecon VOR, 77 degrees would be the course we might follow to get there. So if we spin this, can we spin it? Oh, we can't drag it, that's a shame. So 77, so 50, 60, 77, and there you go, look. Right, so let's go and come off the parking brake and turn the head tracking on, have a look around. I wonder how quickly we can turn in this. What's the turning circle going to be like? Oh, it's pretty good. Probably just about going to miss the trolley. But the wing's going to go straight through it. We won't worry too much about that. It is only a simulator at the end of the day, it's not the real world. So, first task for the day is going to be to take off, obviously. So we're going to taxi out onto the runway, then backtrack. Along the runway. Does this have taxi lights? It's jumping around a little bit. It's a bit bumpy on this taxiway. No. But we've got landing lights, so we'll turn that on anyway. Shall we have a look at it from outside? It's a lovely little aeroplane. Like I said, it's jumping around like a box of frogs on this bumpy old taxiway. I'll have to stay inside to maintain some sort of control over it. Okay, so we're just going to backtrack onto runway, I think it's 04 that we're going to be taking off on. This is an uncontrolled airfield, by the way, so we don't have to talk to tower. I've not got say intentions running in the background, actually. It might be nice to see some aeroplanes though while we're flying, although I turned multiplayer off earlier because it was causing trouble. So it's just going to be us up here today, I think. Should we try it anyway? I'll turn the airplane round. Before we get going, I'll put the simulated traffic on. Or we could run say intentions, of course. Because then we could talk to centre if we wish to on the way back, maybe. So which way should we do this? Say intentions or built-in simulator? We'll go for built-in simulator traffic. So we're going to come down here and we're going to go and turn the quantity of traffic back up to ultra. Then we're going to go to online and turn multiplayer on. I'm not sure if it will come back on without us going into flight conditions, because I think if you turn multiplayer off, it turns off the all players inside the sim. Anyway, flaps to take off, and bring the engine up to speed. Pitot heat as well. So full throttle. Pushing against the wind a little bit with the rudder, and the torque from the engine is trying to pull us a little bit left. Stabilising out as we gain airspeed. So there we go, we're going to 50 knots, 60 knots. Pull the nose up gently and we're in the air. And the flaps can come up already. Just give it a little bit more elevator pressure to hold the airspeed. So you can see it's a nice little aeroplane, it's lovely and stable. But you can see the wind is trying to weathercock us to face the direction the wind is coming from. You can see it gently doing that while we're flying. Okay, so we said we were going to be using radio navigation, didn't we? And it's not picking anything up at the moment, or if it is, it's saying we're exactly on track. It's saying we're exactly on track. So let's fly out towards the direction it's saying, which is about 70 something degrees. We'll also go and check, yep, this is lined up. I've got a keyboard combination to line up the magnetic compass with the directional gyro. So I'm going to pull the throttle back. We don't need the RPM to be quite that high. And we'll see what this aeroplane does in a straight line. So you can see we're gently climbing, coming up through 1,500 feet and flying out in the direction of the Brecon VOR. So we're going to continue climbing, and I'm slowly trimming the aeroplane. So when I let go of the controls now, it will I've let go of the controls and the aeroplane is it's starting to roll, look. So I've got the trim a little bit wrong, but not too bad. Okay. So let's go and push on a bit. So full throttle. It's holding just about 80 knots at 700 feet a minute or so, which is about what you'd expect for this aeroplane. Just flying right over the top of Swansea, by the way. You can see the hills out ahead of us. The landing light can come off, by the way. I think this might be switching fuel tanks on automatic. It's one of the options in the tablet. Yeah, it's got auto fuel selector turned on, so we're not going to have to worry about flicking between left and right tanks to keep them balanced. It's going to do that for us, which is a rather nice trick, really. So while we are flying along and gaining altitude, we're up to 2,500 feet now above sea level. You can see there's the sea. We'll have a little talk about flying an aeroplane, I guess. So as you can see, we're doing 80 knots at the moment, we're still climbing. If I level the plane out with the same amount of power, so watching the vertical speed there, so in order to achieve that, I'm having to push forwards and continue pushing forwards. The reason for that is the faster we get, the more lift the wing generates and the more the nose tries to come up. So I'm having to trim us the whole time as we accelerate to keep the aeroplane level. It won't stay there on its own. You see it doing it again, look. So I've just let go again. So if I just keep my hands away and we're still accelerating, the nose will start to come up at some point. And there it goes. So just those few knots faster is that little bit more lift, and the wing starts to lift the nose. Because the faster you're going through the air, the more lift you're generating. So it's a bit of a balancing act. So we're up to 2,800 feet. Let's get to 3,000 feet at least. Actually, we could do with climbing to maybe 5,000 feet overall, and then we can start doing some exercises. So we plan to get to 5,000 by the time we get out over the beacons. Okay, so we're just keeping an eye on airspeed. So most aeroplanes will have a best climb rate, which will be allied with a target airspeed. So you basically jam the throttle open as far as you safely can, and then you adjust pitch for airspeed. So I think in this sort of aeroplane it's going to be high 70s. So you can pull the nose up and you'll obviously lose some airspeed, and then you let it drop until the airspeed doesn't move. And just maintain that climb rate. Or maintain that airspeed, I should say, by adjusting it with pitch. So we're still climbing, 3,500 feet now. Yeah, so it's a little bit counterintuitive that pulling up pitch and going for a slower airspeed results in a lesser climb rate. There's a balance to be struck, and it's usually around 70-75 knots that you'll meet that balance. The other thing you need to be aware of, look, we've gone through 3,000 feet, we need to start leaning out the engine, because the air gets thinner the higher we get in the sky. Which means that the engine cannot burn the amount of fuel that we are presenting it with, because there is not as much air there as there was at lower altitude. Therefore, to combat that, you can't really change the amount of air coming into the aeroplane, but you can change the amount of fuel you're presenting with the air to burn, which is what reducing the mixture does. You're leaning the mixture out. So coming up to 4,500 feet. And you can see we've drifted off our course where we've turned to 90 degrees. So let's turn back. We know it was about a 70-degree track, so if we go to 50 degrees, you'll see the CDI come back in. This is the course deviation indicator. It tells you where you are in relation to the course you wanted. We can see it on the GPS if we program our route in. So if we went into the flight plan and put the focus in there and roll this and click in here, we can then type in the name of the airfield, or EGFH. So if I type EGFH on the keyboard and press enter, oh no, sorry, press enter here, and then it gives me control back of the aeroplane. You have to be careful about doing that. And then we want to put in the VOR for Brecon, which is, I think, is BCN, isn't it? Yeah. So if we type in, or roll this, and then click on the little keyboard and type BCN and press enter on the button, and enter again to confirm it. There we go. And then press flight plan. You can see there's our track out towards the Brecon VOR. And you can see we're coming back across it, and that corresponds with the line on the nav instrument. So when we are on that radial towards the beacon, the line will be in the middle. So we are encroaching back across it right now, look. But that's based upon you having put the right angle in here. So it says here it was 77 degrees, and I've got that more or less there. If we wind it back a bit, yeah, there you go, look. That's more like 77, and that corresponds. So then we need to be flying 77, otherwise we'll go off to the left of the line. Okay, we're up at 5,500 feet, so we're probably in a good position now to do some playing around. So let's get the airplane trimmed out in level flight, pull the power back a bit. Let's put the head tracking back on so we can naturally look around. Whoa, there's some wind over these hills, is causing us havoc. So, first thing we're going to do is some controlled turns. So we're going to look at the turn coordinator and the vertical speed. We're going to try and hold 5,500 feet. So I'll just descend down a little bit to get there. And we're going to try and turn with the wing on this instrument aligned with the marker. And that should mean, if you look closely at it, it probably says 2 minutes. So it will take 2 minutes to do a full revolution then. So before we do it then, let's turn north so you get a good frame of reference. Oh, actually 90 degrees is a good frame of reference as any. So we're heading 90 degrees at the moment. We are a little bit above 5,500. Let's just drop back down. I'm just pulling the power back as we descend so we don't accelerate too much. Okay, we're back at 5,500 feet. And we're going to initiate a left turn. So we're going to watch this. So we're going to roll left and pull in just enough elevator to control the vertical speed at the same time. So it's a little bit like patting your head and rubbing your tummy. And the trick will be, can we go beyond that, by the way? Oh no, we can't. Look, that instrument is really tough to read because we can't actually know if we're beyond the left marker. So we have to read it by kind of marking for ourselves, and we're climbing, look. So marking for ourselves on the edge of the canopy with our head in a given position where that is. Yeah, so we know kind of halfway between there, with our head in a given position, we are doing okay. And we keep going until we get to 90 degrees. We should have used a clock, shouldn't we, to time it? Would have given us a really good reference then of whether we were at the correct turn rate or not. So we're just coming through 180 degrees, 90 degrees left to go. Climbed a little bit, so we'll descend as we turn the last bit, so less pressure on the elevator to keep the nose as we rotate. And we're back flying 90 degrees now. We level back out, trim forwards a little bit, picked up a bit of speed along the way. Okay, so if we go and have a look on the map, you will see that we did a very, actually quite neat, not super neat, turn. The wind will obviously have had an effect in that. So if you look at the direction the wind's coming, that's why, look. Turning into the wind shortened the circle, turning away from the wind lengthened the circle. So let's go fly back towards the Brecon VOR again, so if we go to about 50 degrees, we'll come back in towards the track. So that was a standard rate turn. We can see the same effect again if we just get back towards our track, and then we'll do the same again. We'll go 90 degrees and we'll turn the opposite direction, and you'll see the wind have that same effect on our turn. So we'll do so we were doing a left turn that time, we'll do a right turn. So if we pull around to 90 degrees, should we get up to 6,000 feet as we're doing it? So just going to get us up to 6,000 feet. Half the reason for gaining all this altitude is so we can do stalls safely in a few minutes. So we're flying 90 degrees. And there we go. We're up to 6,000 feet now. So just let the airspeed come back a little bit. Okay, so let's do a right turn in exactly the same way. So we're going to turn until the wing is aligned. We're going to find a reference point, so it's there we could check, or we can look at the gap for the compass. And we're going to watch the vertical speed and try to hold 6,000 feet as we turn. So you're kind of looking for reference points around the cockpit that you can easily check. And it doesn't help if the wind and air moving around you is throwing the aeroplane around as you're trying to do this. You're just trying to accurately turn at a given rate and hold the altitude, which I'm not doing a great job of, look. So it's all about balancing things simultaneously, so balancing turn rate, climb rate, and just trying to do things in an accurate manner. It's just it's an exercise, really, at the end of the day, nothing more, nothing less. There's a lot of windmills down there, isn't there? It'd be interesting to look at the track on the map, given the wind affecting our turn into and away from the wind, how it changes the circle drawn on the map. It's worth knowing about that, kind of to have in the back of your mind when you're navigating with the wind, about, you know, your track over the ground. Okay, let's level out. We're at 90 degrees again. So let's go and look at that on the map and see what it did. Yeah, look. Same thing, look. Long downwind leg, short upwind leg. Okay, let's turn back to 50 degrees. Back towards our track, towards the Brecon Beacon, which is just coming into view. Even holding 6,000 feet. So next thing we're going to try is some stalls. So I'm going to pull the airspeed, or pull the throttle back. So as the aeroplane slows down, you're going to see the alpha level is going to increase, so the wings aren't going to work as well. So I'm pulling back further and further. Can you hear that? It's a stall warning. Now I've gone into this so gently, the aeroplane is not going to stall. It's just mushing. So look at the vertical speed. So we're pointing at the horizon, but we're not going there, we're going downwards like an elevator. So let's get the power on and bring the airspeed back up, which means the wings start working again. So the reason you need to be careful about this is the direction we were travelling then was across the wind, yeah? So that's interesting, that points towards the simulator not being super realistic. You'd have expected one wing to have gone before the other. So let's turn further across the wind. So we'll face north. We'll come back up to 6,000 feet. Look how much height we lost while we were effectively doing slow flight. We weren't completely stalled. The aeroplane was just mushing towards the ground. Okay, so there we go. We're at 6,000 feet, travelling directly north. But the nice thing that's going to happen this time is, oh, the wind is almost in our face. That's a shame. But let's try it. So we're going to hold the nose, pull the throttle back, and just feed in the elevator to stop the vertical speed. And it's not like it's just gently mushing. What happens if we kick in some rudder? Spin! So to get out of the spin, full throttle and right rudder, and we're out. And then come off the throttle. So the idea of giving it full throttle is that puts airflow over the rudder, which will stop the aeroplane rotating on its axis. So we lost over 1,000 feet in those few seconds, which is quite scary, isn't it? So let's bring this back round to north as we're doing this. So climbing turn. We'll get it back towards 6,000 feet and then we'll go for another spin. We'll try and make it spin the other way. Some aeroplanes will spin one way better than the other, and that's to do with just the way propellers work. So it's interesting to me that this aeroplane was so even when we had the rudder centralized that it just gently dropped the nose and mushed towards the floor. But as soon as we obviously advanced one wing in front of the other, the wings weren't working equally anymore and it entered a spin. We had to kind of force it into it though. It wasn't going to do it of its own accord. Okay, let's try slow flight while we're climbing. So we're at full power and we're not able to maintain airspeed, but we're climbing too hard. Let's see when we get the stall warning. Because notice that we're nose up, but we're losing our vertical speed. We're not flying in the direction we're pointing at all. The wings are starting to complain, you can hear them. And there's the stall warning. At 40 knots. But notice, look, we're flying almost level, even though we're quite significantly nose up. If we drop the nose, we get our airspeed back immediately. Obviously we're descending, but that will come back. We can feed our back pressure in the stick. I should keep the stick in view, shouldn't I? I'm feeding back pressure out of the stick as we accelerate, because the wings are starting to work again. So we're back at 6,000 feet now. So let's try a right-hand spin when we get here. That'll be good in terms of hills. There's no massive hills right below us, are there? Okay, so throttle to idle. And right rudder, and it tucks in, and let go of the controls, and we're spinning. We'll let it go a couple of times, and then full throttle, and rudder opposite direction. Okay, we're going to have to give it a little bit of elevator as well, just to force the nose towards the floor, and then it came out. Notice as soon as it started to come out of the spin, I cut the throttle again, because you really don't want to be racing towards the floor flat out with the engine running. Okay, let's turn back towards Swansea. We get to admire the scenery now. Okay, so we've done spins, we've done stalls, we've done standard turns. We could do some climbing turns, I guess, but they won't progress us anywhere towards Swansea. The trick with doing a standard turn, for example, we were trundling along at, say, 80 knots. If you're doing a climbing turn, you're also trying to maintain your climb rate and airspeed at the same time. So let's try it. If I do a left turn, so I'm going to go full throttle. We want to hold 80 knots. So we're not holding it, look. So nose down. So we're looking at our turn there. And we'll hold 80 knots, there we go. So you can either do one or the other. You can either go for climb rate, which you know your aeroplane can handle, or you go for airspeed. Normally you would look for airspeed. So if we can hold, yeah, we can basically hold 75 knots a little bit more easily, going at about 400 feet a minute, look. The more you tighten the turn though, the more you're going to lose airspeed, because you're forcing the aeroplane around the corner. So you're actually using more angle of attack, and that induces more drag. So yeah, we're holding okay at 75 knots. Notice as soon as I went above 500 feet a minute, the airspeed indicator started dropping. Couldn't quite do it, but it's quite happy at about 400 feet a minute with maintaining airspeed at the power we're giving it. And then we're back towards Swansea again. So as soon as you get to where you want to be, so we're back up to 5,500 feet for example, we can pull the engine back, level the aeroplane, look at the vertical speed. Notice I'm having to push in some aileron. The wind is coming again from this side, remember? And it had got underneath one of the wings and was trying to roll the aeroplane. Sorry, I'm just looking outside the window here. I didn't mean to mess the view up in the simulator. So the general rule if you're trying to recover from a spin is only use the rudder. You shouldn't have any cause. It depends on the airframe, and you'll get different people tell you different techniques, but the basic technique, if you imagine if a plane is spinning one way, you want to stop that spin, and the way to do that is rudder in the opposite direction. You can actually stop a spin before it starts by using that technique. If we show you that. So you saw it in a straight line. So if I did a turn and stall in the turn, the wing will tuck under. Yeah? It doesn't want to do it. Is it going to go? I'm just feeding more and more rudder in. It won't do it. Look, we're too fast. The wing is still flying. We were going, by the time we turned tightly enough, the aeroplane was travelling too fast for it to happen. So let's get nose up. So it can't fly anymore, and there it goes, look. So opposite rudder. I'm going to have to stop playing these games. I'm getting too close to the altitude of the top of the windmills. So yeah, this was actually such a fight to get it to spin. I couldn't show you really an incipient spin where you can stop it from spinning by booting the opposite direction on the rudder before it starts. So at the point it tried to tuck the wing under, if you're quick enough, you can go the opposite direction on the rudder and stop it from doing it. Okay, let's drop down to 4,000 feet. The other thing the Tomahawk is really famous for is side slipping at enormous offset angles. I'll show you. So we're descending, okay. We're at 4,000. We'll drop to 3,000 as we do this. We're going the direction I'm looking. I'm using the rudder to offset with aileron down on the left. So we're actually heading for somewhere there, or maybe in the fields there. But we're pointing that way, just because I'm going full right rudder. So if I let go of the rudder, look, That's the direction we're really going. We can do the same in the opposite direction. So we're still going this way. But we're pointing that way, and we've got wing down to the right. And then we wind it back out with the rudder, and we're going back in the direction we wanted to be going. And the Tomahawk's kind of famous for being good at that. In the days before flaps were invented in aeroplanes, side-slipping was the primary way of losing speed and height. So when you were on approach, it was typical to side-slip, which presents the side of the aeroplane to the airflow and slows you down. It's like a giant air brake. Within the simulator, there are a couple of airplanes that don't have flaps where side-slipping is your main technique. Things like the Boeing 247 from the 1930s. And if you look at the Boeing 247 and think that looks a little bit like a B-17, there's a reason for that. So we can actually use the distance here between ourselves and the Brecon Beacon to know how far away we are. So obviously we're about halfway back now, but the distance between the Brecon Beacon and Swansea Airport was 31 miles. And the distance measuring equipment is telling us how far away the beacon is now. So we're about halfway back. Okay, so we're back below 3,000 feet, so we can go for a rich mixture. We don't have to. Depends on the aeroplane. You can watch the RPM. So if I lean the engine out, watch the RPM. So I'm starving the fuel. It's losing power, look. If you do that too much, if I cut the mixture entirely, we are now in a very heavy glider. The engine has died. Obviously, to get it running again, all you need to do is put the mixture back on and start the engine again. Okay, we're coming back over the top of Swansea. I'll show you on the map where we are. Just approaching Swansea, look. So that's Neath down to our side down here. Swansea's out ahead of us, it's quite a lot bigger. So yeah, as I said at the start, I like to go and redo these kind of exercises every now and again, just to remind myself, and you know, to put the muscle memory back in place, because it is so easy to use these fancy airliners with all of the fancy doodads they've got in their avionics suites, where you program everything, press the go button, and the aeroplane flies you there. And that's obviously that's a skill in its own right, being able to understand and program all of that. But I actually like flying aeroplanes, or simulated aeroplanes. So just coming back up to 3,000 feet. We'll soon be back at Swansea. on the map, see where we are. We're aiming in towards Swansea airfield, so we're about to fly right over the top of the city. We see the port down there. Going to be home just in time before it gets dark. Let's have a look at this aeroplane from the outside. It does look good. I'm going to start descending slowly. We'll drop to 2,000 feet to begin with. So we come down at 1,000 feet a minute. So pulling the throttle back to maintain airspeed, we're doing about 90 knots. It's 2,500 feet now, just coming up. Fly right over the top of the football stadium. Okay, we're at 2,000 feet, so let's bring the power back up. Obviously we're picking up speed now, so more lift, more trim, having to keep an eye on it. And let's keep an eye out now for Swansea airfield. Should just be over the top of this hill. The scenery in this simulator is ridiculous, isn't it? It's so good. Okay, so you can see the runways laid out there ahead of us. So we're going to go a left circuit around runway 04 and then descend down in and land. So we're just turning slightly right. So something that's useful to know at this point is the elevation. So we'll go into little nav map, show us the information for Swansea, and elevation is 280 feet, so we want to be about 1300 feet. So we're going to turn across the airfield. I've just corrected the barometric pressure on the altimeter to the local barometric pressure at the moment. So we're above pattern altitude at the moment, but we're going to descend onto it. So a pattern altitude is typically 1,000 feet above the airfield, so that, like I said, 1,300 feet. So as we descend down, we've got about 500 feet to fall. So this is where the back end of the directional gyro is super helpful, because then you can line up the runway direction with the marker behind you. So we're at 1,300 feet, so we'll bring the power back up to hold speed at this altitude. We can start bringing the flaps in now if it's appropriate to do so, which will help us slow down just using aerodynamic drag. Obviously we've got visuals on the airfield, so it's not difficult at all. Let's start descending then to about 800 feet, which will be 500 over the ground. 600. Start bringing our turn in. Obviously as you turn, you descend even more. So we want visuals. So we're coming in quite fast. And again, we can side slip this, remember, to slow ourselves down. It's a long runway anyway. So speed is coming off. Flaps up. So a bit of a hasty landing there. Normally you'd have a much longer run in with a powered approach. So I just glided it in and brought it in by judgment more than anything. There's obviously 100 ways you can land an aeroplane. Okay, parking brake on. And then we can go and turn the anti-collision lights off, pitot heat off. Go and now the easy way to shut the engine down is just to starve it, which then doesn't leave any fuel in the lines because it used up the last little bit there. And then you can turn the engine off, turn the alternator off, this hasn't got an avionics switch as such, so you just go and turn the batteries off and everything goes dead. And there we go. Hope you enjoyed that. So that's just, yeah, today wasn't really about proper procedures, as you saw. We kind of threw it down at the end onto the runway. It was more about just going for a fly and practicing controlling an aeroplane manually and having control over the aeroplane in those situations, which requires a little bit of practice sometimes. So yes, that was the whole reason for today's flight. Bit of fun, really. And yeah, I encourage you all to do the same. Take a basic aeroplane up, even if you've progressed on to the airliners and all the rest of it. Go and take something really basic up and have a fly with it and, practice control. Right, I'm going to leave it there. See you soon. Take care.